Okay, we are now live. Okay, so hey everyone, nice to see you out there today. So today I have with me Morgan. What's your? It's I believe it's Pypher. Is that how you pronounce your last name, Morgan?
That's correct. That's correct. That's correct. Morgan Pypher, yeah. And good to be with you here today. Thanks for the invitation. It's my brush with celebrity, I suppose.
There's no celebrities when you're talking about or discussing ideas. Actually, that's actually one of the first. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that actually, because that's something that I try to point out when I do have these. To me, this isn't about personalities. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about ideas. I like talk about ideas, and there's this old, the old concept of people that like to discuss other people. Well, that's gossiping and stuff, right? I don't really care much for gossip. Today, I think we're here to discuss ideas. So it's not about, me as the person, and I'm definitely not a celebrity by any stretch of the imagination. It's just I'm someone that happens to put myself out there, and there's quite a few people that apparently agree with what I have to say and the kind of stance and position that I take. But really what we're really be talking about today is mostly the idea and the concept. And like I say, we're going to be to actually delve down deep enough into this topic. You have to get into like the philosophical, you got religious undertones to this. You got the economic modeling. There's lots of aspects of your psychology. This is going to carry through and cover a lot of areas of human intellect. So as long as we're trying to stick to at least, and I'm pretty sure that's what you're here for, is to discuss ideas and try to figure out, where your mindsets come from, where my mindsets come from, and figure out where we actually find some agreements and because that's basically what you're talking about when you're talking about people that are going to live in any particular geographical land masses. How are you going to set up the rules? Just like if you were going to sit down and play a board game with someone, how are you going to set up the rules where we can do this in a manner where it's not just back to the state of nature where it's might makes right? Because that's an easy one, right? You don't have to have much of an intellect or much dialogue if you just want to function in the state of nature. But for us modern humans to function in a philosophical sense in how we deal with each other and use morality, right? Because morality is basically what you're talking about, whether it's social, economic, or personal issues, is there has to be an underlying moral concept or underlying structure or principles that's got to be the ground and basis for any of these. It has to be the foundation for any kind of societal structure, right?
I agree. And that's where we find ourselves today with the political situation. A lot of people look around them and they say, wow, there's so much wrong with what we've got going on. But, very few can imagine something other than what they've always known all their lives. And so my position today isn't so much to argue in favor of the collectivism that we've all grown to hate as a society, because it restricts our freedoms. It denies us our rights as individuals. And I find that your take on things oftentimes is about the individual. And I agree with the principle of the individual and the freedoms that come along with that individualism. It's a fact of life, though, no matter what it seems, that there's always this rising to the top of some sort of leadership. In our modern society, it might not be so deserved. And so I'd like to discuss my ideas of what I would imagine, what form it might take in a new and awakened society. So that's my position. I'm very much the voluntarist, the individualist, my own self. So
it's gonna just one sec there, Morgan, because for my side of it, your audio's cutting out. So I'm just going to turn off my camera in case it's a broadband issue as far as that. But you're cutting out quite a bit here, even just with the audio, and I don't want anyone to miss out what you're trying to say.
I'm also a realist enough to realize that most people are going to want some sort of a structure in their life, working structure that benefits the people, opposed to what we have going on in today's society. Only getting my audio. Is that an improvement there, Bennett? Yeah, no kidding, eh? Red light.
Yeah, I'm still here. It's just that, like I said, I mentioned.
Oh, okay.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Do you have a good internet connection where you're at?
It is usually pretty good for buffering video and such, but I'm out in the country and I work off of a hub.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So,
do you have one of those? Is it ExploreNet?
No, I use Bell actually.
Oh, okay. Anyways, because you're just cutting out a little bit. So when you're talking, I'm going to try to keep my
I use Bell telephones. So
ooh. Yeah, it's going to be hard for people on the that's going to be difficult for people to actually be able to listen to what you're saying, because you're cutting out really, really, really bad on this end. That's an unfortunate thing. Even if you are living in the rural part.
Your comments? I don't know.
Hello?
I can hear you very well. I got no problem with the download. It's the upload that seems to be the problem here.
Yeah. Okay. So basically,
are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, it's actually, we shouldn't even have this issue today in 2019. We should have actually proper internet speeds, and we did if we didn't have big government suppressing and denying actual real competition in the marketplace. Because, like I said, these kind of problems have already been taken care of if it wasn't for the fact that you have companies such as Bell and Rogers, are basically two dominant players that basically rules over this country as far as telecommunications. And that's the sad reality of that, folks. Is that this is what we have to deal with. So you have people in this country that have to. You can't even in audio form, like you might as well be living in the third world countries in some areas of this country. So that's the other thing, to pretend that we're all equal and that big government. Yeah. Oh yeah. We just got to have these government regulators to protect us from bad corporations and monopolies. Meanwhile, everything the government does has created bad economic situations and monopolies. So anyways, don't even get me started on that. But when you're talking about what we're going to be discussing today. Hello?
Hello. Yeah.
Okay. I
hear what you're saying. And
okay, it's just that I get a delay, so I'm hearing you talk while I'm talking. It's kind of baffling. It's giving me a bit of an issue here. But anyways, so what you were saying, so this is what I want to point out first and foremost, just to cover the area of, I kind of understand your concerns, is the fact that you think that people that are more talking about libertarian principles and values, that they're more so individualistic, that because I hear this complaint from a lot of people, and maybe I haven't stressed this enough in some of my past videos, is people that are promoting of individual rights and freedoms and liberties. I mean, I'm a father, right? I have children. I have a family. I have extended family. I have a wife of 29 years. So what it comes down to is no, collectivism, and that's the part where you actually have to look at the defined meaning of these words, right? So collectivism has a very defined meaning, and it suggests that you should sacrifice individuals for the concept of what they call the greater good or the collective. Now, the greater good of the collective could be a country, right? It could be a religious institution. What defines the collective? I mean, that's open to interpretation, and a lot of people have conjured up their own collectives, right? But collectivism, right? Because a normal collective, like if I go and join a hockey league or, to join up to a pool tournament or play darts, well, I'm going to be doing all that voluntary, and my choice as the individual is never denied, right? I have the choice to opt in or opt out. Collectivism is in terms of structures that's used to dictate or control our social economic life. So government and a collective such as a government that seeks to, like I say, be the final arbiter or authority over the rest of people in a particular landmass, suggests that it's okay to sacrifice individuals for their concept of their greater good. But once again, it's individuals that get to define the concept of the greater good. So what you're really suggesting, it's an oxymoron and actually a complete contradiction in logical or intellectual terms to suggest that a collective should take supremacy over an individual. Because once again, that collective, even they're not all going to, you're never even going to find a collective where everybody's going to agree on every term or every situation or any undertaking or opinion, or going after particular people. That's going to be always determined and dictated by either an individual or a group of individuals. So whether it's a king, a monarch, right, a president, a prime minister, a premier, collectivism seeks to pretend that it's all about a big family, right? But once again, that family suggesting that actually the family is only as good as the strongest members, and anything that doesn't align with the collective or doesn't conform to the collective or isn't helping to sustain the collective anyway, well, they can be easily sacrificed. So the point of individualism is not to deny that people will want to put themselves in particular tribes or groups. The point of individualism and the respect of individual rights, freedoms, and liberties is so that nobody, no group and no individual and no collective has any pretense or understanding that they can just override or overrule the inherent rights and freedoms or liberties of the individual for their concept of the greater good. Because all collectivist ideologies, whether it's fascism, socialism, democracy, communism, globalism, they all have this ideologically driven perspective that they're doing something for their concept of what they perceive to be the greater good. And they're willing to sacrifice individuals along the way for that. But how many times throughout history have we seen that the individuals that end up being sacrificed for their concept of the greater good are actually, and that's perfect that it's working out today, right? Because Easter weekend, I mean, Jesus Christ was sacrificed for some concept of the greater good, although the big difference there is at least he chose to voluntarily take and assume that sacrifice. But once again, it was the Romans that were trying to impose sacrificing them so that he would conform with their at the time, the Roman Empire, the state. So once again, no matter who it is, no matter what person, what individual, the minute you have any ideology that subscribes or puts forth the notion that you can sacrifice an individual, well, then you no longer have the semblance of any genuine freedom. Now you're just talking about collective or groupthink, and it's just whoever can conform to the group. And like I said, all great ideas through all of human history, every single one of them, without exception, every great idea that has ever advanced us forward as far as being free human beings came from an individual's mind. You're never going to point to a collective that conjured up an idea of freedom or liberty, because nobody sits around like we're not the Borg. We don't all think with the same mind. We all have individual minds. So every concept that has ever been derived or constructed in regards to what it means to be free came from an individual mind. So the sacrificing of an individual means to sacrifice those who may very well have the best ideas.
I will agree with almost everything that you've got to say there. Oftentimes, the person wishing to exercise themselves and exercise the freedom as an individual is without the resources to do so. Don't tell me. Are you still there? Okay, very good. So, yeah, the resources that are available to a people, I think, really leads to the level of freedom that they can enjoy. Now, looking back in some older days, people were free on the land and able to settle Canada, Western United States. They were able to just make their way in life with the little bit of resources that were available to them. And many were very successful at doing so. There was always striving for people to find more, to be able to enjoy more than what would be provided just simply for themselves in their life. And I think that this is what leads people to run to the arms of what we now know as big government, is the idea that somebody might have something more than another and hold that out. And so they look to somebody to sort that out, to make it more equitable for people. And so I see this in the way that the corporations dominate the marketplace. And as you made mention of the big telecoms, and that's another fine example of it. because of where I live, I'm constrained by their plan as to what I can have available to me and how much it's going to cost. And I have no or little recourse to go anywhere else besides the little bit of technology that they allow for me out here in the country. If I live in the city, if I submit to a greater level of control over my life, then I can have more privilege, such as a better system of communication available to me. And so for me to move away from that type of dominance in our government and our corporate, our finance, those are the things that I would want to see in a brand new world. And I don't know that only I have these ideas. I'm sure lots of people can look around them and find things that they can think could be improved if only the resources were available to them. And I'll leave that point for you to take away.
Well, yeah, actually, it's funny because when you're talking about the telecommunication industry, some of these big players, actually, these startups, well, as they've been coined, and it's appropriate, so unicorns, because of the massive valuations that are pertaining to them, is these social media platforms that are now, some of them are in excess of hundreds of billions. I believe Apple at one point in time and Amazon had reached the threshold on the speculation of the stock market, mind you, but still, and the threshold of getting upwards close to $1 trillion. Now, because we have private industry today, such as Elon Musk, if there was actually such thing as genuine market competition, and a business owner didn't have to go through a myriad of layers of constant bureaucracy and licensing and just regulations that just completely hampers and hinders anyone's willingness or incentives to start a new business. Well, as we look at there today, there's now private industry. If there were actually potential for private investors such as Elon Musk to use their SpaceX program, and he's even suggested what's called LEOs, low Earth orbit satellites. Actually, no, those ones that actually, sorry, I'm actually incorrect in that. It's actually not the low Earth orbiting satellites. It's actually the ones that you put up further up into space. But basically, if you had a structure that was conducive with, like, say, a market that understands what the future is unfolding and what we require as far as infrastructure in regards to telecommunications. Well, at this point in time, 2019, we would have probably an entire satellite system up there where you wouldn't, whether you're in a rural community or a city community, like a big urban center, because you use satellites, it doesn't require ground-based infrastructure or minimal ground-based infrastructure. You could cover rural areas. You could cover people in the middle of the desert, such as, satellite phones, right? I mean, that's technology that's conducive for only the wealthy and a very small percentage of the people. But once again, because of the ability of capitalism, and once you allow that to that market equation to trickle out, so you get enough capital investment where people are willing to invest it and see that the returns are coming in the long run. But today, no one wants to spend a whole lot of money on these big initiatives or investments because the central planners have made it so you have no return anymore. The economy is so centrally planned that they're basically looking to even bonds, which is basically the selling of future productivity, basically is what a bond is. But even now, when you're looking at a lot of countries in Western societies, because of macroeconomics and central planning with central banks, now you're having countries, and this happened a lot in Europe and even Japan, and now we're seeing the divergence as far as the North American economies, where now bonds yields are returning less than what even your average annual inflation rates are. So you're actually losing. Investors are losing their money whether they stick it under their mattress. They're losing money whether they invest it in the market. They're losing it if they're investing in the bonds. So there's no incentive anymore for people to actually use proper market fundamentals and corrective measures to cover over or correct some of the mistakes in the past. This is the problem with central planning and having central planners getting to dictate and micromanage who gets to be the dominant players or the monopoly in any particular industry. Bell and Rogers would never, especially with their customer service, their ridiculous prices, Bell and Rogers would never, I mean, if you had actual genuine market competition in Canada, they would basically, you would see their market share. They would be Sears, but on a real fast pace. You would see that we're just in less than 4 years, 5 years, I would say at most. And they would cease to exist as a company if they didn't completely restructure the business model.
Yeah, I have to agree with everything that you say there as well. And I believe that if people had a say, like your average Joe on the street had a say in how business was operated, how business was regulated, you would see a lot more Joe on the street engaging in entrepreneurial efforts. The corporate job marketplace, I find, has just stripped away the freedoms of people to be able to decide for themselves what best course is, for them and their limited resources. When you see Bell and Amazon, like you say, bringing in multi-billion dollars, Loblaws, the recent scandal that just arose in the news is another example. $3 billion profit margin. They're begging for corporate welfare for their freezers, and their investors and stakeholders voted down sharing any of that wealth with the employees of the Loblaws chains, and they're the ones that are making the value of the corporate business plan. It's not the president upstairs who's working the cashiers, working the stock, stocking the shelves, but they're drawing the greatest amount of wealth from everyone else's effort. And when it comes to sharing any of that, these people are so wound up with themselves that they feel that they have a greater right to the energy that went into creating the successful business, a successful corporation, than the people who actually did the work. And if I was to put forward any kind of a plan, it would see, a great diminishment in how much any one individual can take away from the wealth of so many others.
Well, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but here's the problem, and this is not your fault per se, but I've seen this. This is a problem I've seen that's profound, and it plays a key and pivotal role in why we will never get anything done. Because of people, predominantly those that have been your educators, and most of them are very much socialists or collectivists of central planning types. And these are the kind of people, like I say, so when you're talking about what you're doing, and like I said, I've had this conversation with people for a decade now, at least, is they want to point to the corporation. And as much as I even said and referenced earlier, Bell and Rogers has the monopoly, but Bell and Rogers has no army. Bell and Rogers has no police force. Bell and Rogers has not one Canadian that you could actually go out and talk to today would say, well, Bell wants us to do this, and we're just going to have to do that, right? Everyone's like, fuck, Bell don't own me. Bell don't, no. So actually corporations have zero power that's not afforded them by government, right? It's the ones that get to write the rules. This is the problem that I see, and Canadians are really bad. The only people I've ever noticed actually are Americans. Americans that actually understand proper market fundamentals and economics. These seem to be, and some people that understand classical and Austrian economics, right? They understand this stuff. Most Canadians, and it's unfortunate, like I say, it's not your fault. We've been raised in this quasi-socialist country that they will never tell you the kind of stuff like that you would be properly educated, like if you went to an American education system. Well, now even the American education system has been taken over by the leftists, the collectivists and the postmodernists and the Marxists. But the historical understanding is that you need market fundamentals to be the drivers, right? And that invisible hand, that goes all the way back to the Enlightenment era and Adam Smith. And people think that they don't, well, unless you've actually read these things, like the Wealth of Nations per se, and you understand it intrinsically, then if you're only hearing superficial aspects and one-liners or 30-second sound bites, you'll never get to fully grasp it. But what it is well, the benevolence of the bush or the baker was a perfect phrase that Adam Smith used. And what it is people think that all those greedy corporations, and no doubt, if you want to be a businessman, you're going to go into it for the profit motive. But we've been taught to think that people want to go in to start a business, that profit motive means that, they're going to be, look at the horns that are coming out. But that's obviously, and anyone, like I say, don't matter what your background is. Like I come from like a bunch of truck drivers background. My stepdad, I love the man tremendously. His education, grade 5. But the man went from a nobody with a grade 5 education to owning a trucking business with 7, 8, I think he had 9 trucks at one particular time, making pretty good coin. And why that was because he had the ability to do what was good for him. He didn't go out to drive truck, right, for an altruistic reason. I mean, there was underlying aspects that were secondary in nature that, yeah, you get to benefit society as a subsequent consequence of you trying to provide for yourself, right? But the whole point is that the directive, the things that caused him to do what he did was his own self-interest or the interest of his family or the people that he chooses to voluntarily offer his products or service to. And this is what the free market does. The only thing that prevents free market from happening is government. Government is a representation of like a metaphorical invisible gun in the room. Although it's not invisible, if you challenge government, you'll find out that that goes from a metaphor to a real life gun pointed directly at you the minute you don't abide by their political mandates or edicts. So when you have like this arbitrary authority that gets to dictate and control, so Bell and Rogers, the only way they have the ability to monopolize the industry is because they have got to help, just like Zuckerberg now is saying, hey, come ahead, go ahead and regulate Facebook, right? Because Zuckerberg realizes too, if you want to keep your platform entrenched, well, now you do want government regulations because that basically allows you now to be that dominant player. Absent regulations, now regulations will happen just like I say, the benevolence of the butcher, the baker thing, going back to Adam Smith. Let's say you sell bad meat or a bad loaf of bread to your consumers. Well, you might get away with that once or twice, but eventually the word of mouth is going to spread and people are just going to stop using your business because as long as it's voluntary, as long as the choice, and as long as there's competition, which there will always be competition, right? As long as there's people that are requiring something, a product or service, there's going to be someone willing to provide it for their own biased internal reasons, for their own selfish desires, for their own selfish reasons. But once again, that benefits society. So that's the thing with individualism and respecting individual actors or businesses is no one has any pretense of authority of each other, and how we deal with each other, as long as it's done voluntarily, well, that there's genuine regulations in the free market, but it's done under how we want to deal with each other on a voluntary measure. When it's regulation by government, it's government saying, I'm picking a winner or loser in this economy, and if anyone else tries to challenge them, well, look at all the barriers. I mean, like I say, if you were, perfect example, I'm sure I could today easily get many people to invest lots of money. If I came up with the idea is easy as far as how we can get past having the ridiculous limited infrastructure in this country as far as telecommunication. It's how do we get over the obstacles of how much government bureaucracy and regulations has made it so that for me to start up into the market and try to challenge the dominant players, well, it'd be basically impossible unless I'm willing to put in, billions and billions of dollars and wait till maybe someday some government might come along and allow some free market competition to flourish. And then maybe then I'll get a leg up. The only reason why social media platforms got to gain so quickly and so beneficial is because it was so new that most of these central planners didn't even know what was going on. And by the time it hit them, it was too late then, right? If you can trick the central planners or do things in a manner that they just don't realize how smart and how wise you are, you can try to get around it. But the best way to help you or I or anyone else in Canada is to allow market competition to take place. And the only thing that prevents that from taking place is government. Even the very term, I'll just say this and then I'll let you respond. But even the very term corporation, that is a legal fiction invented by legislation. There's no such thing as a company or a corporation without government legislation. Without government legislation, it's just a business, a company, a store, right? There is no such thing as limited liability where you can just offload your losses onto other people without government legislation that said that that's okay. You still there, Morgan? Uh-oh. Not hearing anything here. Have we lost Morgan? Let me see what's going on in the chat while I'm waiting here. I still see the picture of him down there. I'm just waiting while you respond there, Morgan. I'm just going to go through and see what's going on here on the in the chat. So Ian, same to you. Just Trudeau must be at it trying to keep you guys. No, it was just some. Yeah, there we go. Morgan was trying to switch from his computer doesn't have a camera. He was trying to switch to a tablet that did have a camera, but it didn't work. That's why we're doing audio only on his end as far as that goes. Hey, Christopher, Libertarians late on 420. There's got to be a joke in there somewhere. A good one, Christopher. Hey, what's going on? You still there? Hello? Hello? I hear you're there. I'll just give it a second in case you need a second here.
Yeah, I'm still here. I lost it again.
Yep.
Are you there? Are you there?
Yeah, go ahead, Morgan. Yeah, dang, it's too bad with the internet connections in this country. It's rough. It's rough. Shouldn't have to deal with this stuff today, not in 2019. My goodness, this stuff is so foolish. So foolish. See what else is going on here in the chat while we're waiting. Any yellow vest protesters in the big city this weekend? Protest? Yeah, right on. Starling third. Mike Miller. The fuck is that? Third. Oh, Mark third? What's that? Oh, third person in the chat, maybe. Is he? Oh, yeah, he's breaking up bad, Ian. Unfortunately, I think he said he lives in the country in a rural community, and he's got, I don't know, in the country. I know with Bell, well, you got this fake kind of high speed where they just use your phone line connection and give you kind of like, it's like a booster. So it is kind of high speed, but not necessarily high speed. Then there's, of course, ExploreNet, which once again, they have some very restrictive policies as far as how much broadband you're allowed. I remember when I had it back in years ago when I was living in New Brunswick, they had what's called the FAP, Fair Access Policy, where they'll just slow your connection down right like to snail speed because there's too many people trying to use the same amount of, or the limited amount of broadband. And they slow certain people down once you use too much. Like, what a ridiculous, like I say, this is what you get when government gets to dictate and be the final arbiter of what kind of infrastructure you have in this country. That's truly, I mean, government, show me anything that well, I know I've heard other people say there is some things that government's efficient at. Yeah, stealing from you, right? But I mean things that are positive, folks. Anyways, let's see what's going on with Morgan here. I'm not hearing him anymore. You still there, Morgan?
Are you there?
Yeah, I sure am.
How's that?
I can hear you now.
Is that any better? Are you?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I've always referred to the four horsemen of the apocalypse, and that would include government, media, corporations, and banks. And between those four, they've got everything tied up in order that they all funnel the wealth of our, and they have a way of funneling this up to the top through the layers, and those of us down here on the bottom are the ones that end up paying for their good benefit. And those are the resources that I was talking about. You know, if there was an equitable share of the resources available to us here in Canada, a nation so rich with food that we produce for available to our own selves, to our own, whether our resources are denied to the average person, and the profits of those resources, like I said, funnel their way up to the top through the four horsemen.
Well, the media is just basically, well, especially the three, I didn't quite catch that fourth one there, but when you're talking about the media, the government, and corporations, once again, when you're talking about, especially what you're talking about today, is they're all dictated. This was the difference between, and I'll try to explain this for you, this is the difference between the communists and the fascists. The fascists were much, much wiser and much more advanced in their intellect and how you try to control the means of production. Just like back in the past, you could use slavery, or you could trick people by, telling them that they're free, but still controlling and micromanaging everything they do, which basically you still kind of get the direct result. The only difference is you've tricked their psychology and their mentality into thinking that they're free. So the fascists, instead of taking over the means of the productions, they just use government regulation and legislation to dictate and control. So rather than sending in some idiot like communist, right? That's never run a business ever in his fucking life, but he has some concepts of Marxism or Red Das Kapital of the manifesto. you know that guy's not going to work out being a good corporate leader, right? So what the fascists, and which is what we see today, is more or less the fascistic model, is they basically took it, instead of taking over the means of the production or the media or business, they just write the rules that dictate and controls what the media is allowed to do or say, or what the political or the corporate class, how they're allowed, their businesses are allowed to flourish or function. So it still works out the exact same. So it's slavery, whether it's indirect slavery or direct slavery, whether it's someone with an actual chain attached to the neck of the person, or it's someone that's tricked their mind to enslave their mind, so the chains actually control their mind. Like I say, the geniuses of the fascists, of the collectivists, said, no, let's control their mind, because to control their body, that's hard work. It requires a shitload of resources. It requires a whole lot of people to try to control others. So no, let's control their mind instead. So these, whether it's the corporation or the media, they're all still functioning as branches of government. Because that's the thing, you'll never hear anyone in the media, anyone, not one. And if you think that there's none of them that are smart enough to understand that actually there's not even any such thing as the kind of governments that we live under today, if you think through it with a critical mind, they're not legitimate in any way, stretch of the imagination. It's totally just like if someone said back in the day that no, King George doesn't have any genuine legitimate authority over me. It's only because other people believe King George has authority over me. It's the same with modern democracies, and whether it's Justin Trudeau or Scheer, the only reason why people will follow and abide by their orders or their edicts is because they believe that these people are their authority, which, like I say, it can be easily done with just 4 questions that can prove that no, there's no way they gained any legitimate authority over people. That, like, if I don't have an authority to steal from people, which is taxation, take from them without their express permission or consent, well, how the hell do I delegate that right or authority onto another human being? I can't delegate a right or authority to another human being that I don't have myself. So just because I check a box off every few years, how the hell did I magically make that happen? I didn't. The only reason why it happens is because the rest of my people believe that shit actually is real. Just like people in the past that used to believe that the earth was only 6,000 years old, right? Once you've created a dumbed down population that's ideologues, like I say, whether it comes from people that were predominantly of the religious concepts, which were still trying to govern your life, or today what's called the state or government, they're all still collective ideologies that are based and ground upon pure abstract bullshit and mysticism. But that's the thing, because they have the ability to control the media or the corporations or your currency, because a currency is supposed to be, well, money, a proper money is just supposed to be a representation. Well, proper money has 3 main goals, right? Is a measure of value, exchange of value, and a retention of value. Proper money, like I said, I don't care if you use a tally stick, gold, silver, pieces of paper. I don't even care. As long as it has those 3 attributes, that is what proper money is. But with modern governments and the modern fiat currencies we have, central banks now get to dictate the value of that currency. So even though you're holding $1 in your hand today, if the central bank prints a bunch of money, which creates massive amounts of inflation that now destroys the purchasing power of that same dollar, now that dollar is only worth 80 cents. Well, by some arbitrary measure, some arbitrary edict by some central planner, now you've lost 20% of your purchasing power, not because your value of your labor or your intellect was somehow changed or differentiated. It was because someone else had the ability to affect that.
Agreed. These are all mind games that have been played on our society since the very beginning. It's been my experience when I was working in the Arctic. I made the acquaintance of quite a number of Inuit people, and prior to the arrival of white Western society up in the far north, they were the last people here in Canada that lived in a community that the community played its role in the direction of the community. When there was plenty for everybody, there was lots to be shared. When there was scarce resources, you took care of your community first, and where you had traded, where you had merchandised your products previously, those people were willing to share if they had the abundance to share. And I'd see that oftentimes in people down here. When we have more, we're more willing to share. It's when there's a scarcity And the scarcity that we suffer in today's society is all contrived. I mean, there's just so much available. If it was a free market without the government interference, that we would all be able to enjoy everything that the nation has to offer, and we wouldn't be so resentful of others who seem to be taking something that we are unable to afford for ourselves or access for ourselves. And you know, this is one of the sicknesses that I see in our society today. My roommate, I mentioned earlier, had studied for a time in China, and you know, we can look to China as an example. The people that your average person on the street, they know damn well that they're the property of China. They are, and what their value is in their society. And here in the West, like you made mention, you know, we're told that we're free and it's purported to be. And so, you know, a government by the people and for the people, like is laid out in America. And you're right, America has a different way of doing things, but they're also, so, you know, people think, they look around and they wonder why they live in. And we're supposed to be made to give thanks for the fact that we can pay for so much. Bennett, were you able to hear anything?
Yeah, I caught most of what you said there. I said, what it comes down to, though, no, I caught most of what you said, but what it comes down to me, once again, it comes back to, because I understand this is a problem with ideologues. They get this concept where they can engineer humans. Well, a libertarian such as myself actually thinks of the fact that I recognize that humans are inherently fallible, and they work off of incentive structures. And same with the animal kingdom. Incentives are what matter. And what happens when you have a government structure, when you're talking about as far as helping people out, or, you know, distribution of income or wealth. Well, as soon as you have a government, a monolithic entity that now tries to assume that role, that task, that responsibility of distributing that wealth, well, now you've placed that in the hands of people that you have no way of proving of what their motives are, because once again, it's all based on of dictates and edicts and forced subjugation and coercion and using theft and forced wealth and income distribution. Whereas if you do it under a model that's built on voluntary exchange, such as charity or through church groups or other areas such as that, then you know actually who you're directly helping. So, like, perfect example, if I wanted to help someone in my community and someone that comes from rural New Brunswick, this happens all the time. To this day, it still happens all the time when somebody goes through a tragic incident, or maybe their house burned down, they didn't have enough insurance, or maybe that wasn't covered. People in the community will come together voluntarily. And why that is because they don't have this concept drilled in their mind, because they've grown up and were raised in an area where you take care of each other. The minute you create some structure, which is what government is, where they get to offload all of their personal responsibility to this central plan and government, because the government takes from them. So even myself as an example, knowing that the government takes half of my income over the course of the year, where's the incentive for me to want to step out and be more charitable? They've already taken, I mean, any person would automatically think, listen, half of my income, that's being, even though I didn't do it voluntary, it wasn't chosen a charity, but the fact that someone has taken half of my income and redistributed however they seem fit, well, yeah, I'm not going to want to add up or offer extra costs or imposition on myself that's going to actually directly affect my life negatively. So this is the problem with having a forced wealth or income redistribution scheme, which is what government represents, is it destroyed all of our incentives to want to help each other or people in our community, because we automatically recognize, well, Well, government said that they're going to take over that role, that task, that responsibility. So that's not, I've already done my job. Now I can wipe my hands clean, right? So that once again, even government by its very disposition of being an income redistributive or wealth redistributive state or model is it completely denies and ignores personal responsibility and personal accountability. That's the flip side of that. Still there, Morgan? Sorry, folks. I'm trying to keep myself off of camera for the most part, so that hopefully Morgan, although I don't think it helps on his side of the connection, to be honest with you, just trying my best here to hope, because I know it's rough. He doesn't seem to be able to get a hold.
I've been watching, and we can.
You go ahead, Morgan. Wow, your internet connection must be pretty bad. Pretty bad. Let me see what else we got here. Can't understand any of that. Shannon Gardner. Yeah, I know it's too bad. It's unfortunate. It really is. Because I thoroughly enjoy talking to people. It's just coming at it from a regular perspective. It's just trying to talk about these things without a particular ideology or some particular means that they're trying to use to benefit themselves in some way. I love to discuss this stuff with people such as Morgan here. It is unfortunate that this connection is pretty bad, but I'm just going to, like I say, while I'm waiting to hear back from Morgan, I'm just going to read a couple more of the comments. If you apply for a job with a government regulated corporation and sign a contract where you declare yourself a taxpayer, you might be a status. If you apply for a job with a government regulated corporation and sign a contract where you declared yourself a taxpayer, you might be a status. You're working. I mean, the only people that don't, I mean, how many companies actually still function under the working under the table? And if you get caught, the government will screw you completely up for not paying your taxes. So that's not a true statement. People that are trying to find ways to get out from underneath the gun in the room, trying to steal and plunder their income. I mean, of course, I applaud those people and good for them for doing so. But even if they end up having to work for a business in a country that basically all businesses or corporations have to function under the central planning dictates as far as how they're allowed to, use their business. Like I say, unless you're talking about the black market, right, or the underground, every business out there, from the little business guy, the single entrepreneur, the only employee he's got is him, all the way up to a corporation with thousands of employers. They also have to function under government edicts and mandates as far as how their business unfolds. You know that. So trying to pretend otherwise, I don't know what. Like I say, is to suggest that we should all just work in the gray or black market. No, I don't think we should always hide all of our economic activities. I say the people that want to plunder our income, rather than hide our economic activities from these authoritarians, I say, let's all of us people show these authoritarians that, yeah, you got no fucking authority over me. I'm going to carry out my business, and there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it. The only thing that prevents us from being free is not just the politicians, it's their mindless order followers, right? These politicians that sit in the legislature, whether it's in Ottawa or any other of the legislatures across this country, a few hundred or a few thousand old fucking hags or hacks in politics, they have no authority whatsoever to control the economics or the business of millions of people or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. They have no power. They have no authority at all to do so, other than the fact that they got a lot of mindless order followers that if you don't follow through and do what your authority, right, your so-called authority tells you to do, they got more mindless order followers that will come to your place of business, your place of residence, charge you for not following government edicts, right? So it's in reality, the political class, the ruling class, yes, they are definitely the ones that are the representation of the core of the threat. But once again, a few hundred people or a few thousand people in fucking stupid ass suits in some big building there, they have no power over millions of people. What does have the power over millions of people is that, like I say, representation of force or violence, which is the order followers, which are the police and, well, the military as far as foreign stuff, right? But as far as domestic, it's the police forces, the ones that make sure that you as the citizen can't stand on your own 2 feet and do things as you see best fit, as long as you're not harming anyone. Because once again, once you step outside the paradigm and what these structures are allowing you to do, well, then you'll be punished. And like I say, not like the politicians themselves can just going to walk up to you and punish you. The only way you'll ever be punished for stepping outside the orders or edicts of your central planners is with their mindless order followers coming to, follow out the orders. And this is so, after the Nuremberg trials, to me, if you're alive today in any Western country, if you don't understand this whole correlation of the mindless order followers, those are the ones that keep the state existing. Without the, like I say, without the police, without those people that are willing to maintain this structure, well, this structure would cease to exist tomorrow. This is the thing. Now, I'm not suggesting that we should break down society entirely, which is why I use my words and dialogue and say, I don't want a revolution. I want to get the rest of my Canadians up to speed so that their intellect is in the proper mindset. So they're not looking at politicians or their mindless order followers as their authority. Once you recognize that the emperor has no clothes, then the emperor has no power over you, right? And the emperor will be embarrassed and go run off into the fucking woods somewhere. The problem is the majority of the people in my country and the most of the people in most Western countries, they believe in the religion of statism. Like, this is the thing. Christianity has taken a back seat. The new religion, it's called statism, and it's your belief in these politicians and their mindless order followers as being your legitimate authority. Once you get enough people to break free from that concept and stop thinking that these people are your fucking rightful rulers or owners and have any claim to your productive income or your wealth, well then, like I say, that's no violent revolution. And that's why when I upload my videos, it says true liberty requires evolution of your mind, not revolution that keeps bringing you back around to violent conflict, going through this cycle, back to more conflict, more of this vicious cycle. No. Once you've evolved and adapted your intellect to think these people have no authority over me, and if you get enough people to adopt that mentality, well, then you have a society, then you have a culture that there won't be no central planners. Because if you don't believe in the central planner, just like if you don't believe in Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny, now you don't have to fear the Santa Claus or the Easter Bunny. Did you catch any of that, Morgan? Yeah, poor Morgan, man. Yeah, I'm sorry about this. I wish we could have a better chat because I was really looking forward to this, to be honest with you. Hello? Bummer. That's a real bummer. Like I say, folks, statism, it's a construct of the mind. Once you break free of it, like to me, yeah, my body, I'm restricted in many of my physical things I'm allowed to do. But my mind, freer than basically almost very few people in Canada.
Again, tail end of it there, I've enjoyed being able to comment.
Sorry, I'm gonna.
You're right. Are you there?
Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
Are you there? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just caught the tail end of what you were saying, and again, it's hard for me as a individualist, a volunteerist, to suggest that any kind of collectivism is going to be a benefit to the people. So, a people's government will into see this now in France, even after the tragedy of rising up and telling their government and all the other Western that they're not going to stand for the ownership, the idea that the people of a nation are chattel, something to be negotiated away for the loan of a few fraudulent dollars. And when people, I don't know what it's going to take for people to wake up to the fact that these people don't have any power over us except for what we give them. But we do it to each other as well. You know, when you go to the tax on behalf of the government, and, you know, rest assured in their own mind that, well, I got to do it. It's my job. You know, this is when you go to the agency, a government agency, to renew your license plate. Well, I'm just doing my job. Stop doing this. Payroll office, when you go down to collect your paycheck, she's the one that stole that money and submitted it.
You cut out on me again there, man. Anyways, I'm going to try to respond. Like I say, when you're talking about, it really comes down to state of mind, predominantly is what we're talking about today. And because I realize that we're not anywhere near close to the point where we're just going to reject stateism entirely, because, like I say, well, humans advance. So it was the church that used to be your arbitrary authority, which, once again, it sounded good in theory as far as when you're talking about the abstract concept is God. But once again, human beings turned that into real human tangible beings as being your authority. So whether it's the Pope, right, or the king that is appointed by God, right? So once again, it comes down to getting away from the concept of placing this ultimate arbitrary authority in regards to morality, right, as it pertains to how we deal with each other in moral or ethical terms. That has to be something that's so far and so abstract that no human being has the ability to skirt or undermine or deny it, just like 2 + 2 is 4. For anything to work scientifically in regards to arithmetic, well, you have to understand the underlying principles that arithmetic, how that formulation works. So you have to understand that 1 + 1 is 1, 2 + 2 is 2. And if you keep all that, the principles, which, like I say, are universally consistent, then you can literally use those equations to send people off into space, you know, to circumvent the planet or the moon, for that matter. What you have to get down to is just use universal ethics. And like I say, those universal ethics or sense of morality has to be in the abstract and not placed in the hands of human beings that can change that based on legislation. Because that's what you're talking about when you're talking about government, is people that are supposed to be your authority, your moral authority, even though they try to say legal authority, but legal and morality is completely intertwined when you think about it in the proper sense. So if you want to have a moral authority, and just like in the past, you had the separation of church and state, well, we have to have a complete separation of economy and state. If we're going to advance, I think our next step forward for human beings is the denial, like I say, or the acceptance of the separation of church and state, which is basically just because the church and the state are two kinds of religions. So what it is, the state, they don't want anyone to believe in a different religion. But in reality, no, you need not the state to be your moral authority. You need some external abstract moral authority that is not based or grounded upon fallible human beings. To me, like I say, science will get there at some point in time. Ayn Rand, her philosophy of objectivism, Stephen Molyneux with universal preferable behavior. We've already made a couple steps forward as far as bringing that into more of the scientific realm as far as universal ethics or morality. But until we've got that point, to me, let's use the fundamental aspects of Christianity, right? Judeo-Christian fundamentals, which is, the golden rule. Don't hurt people, don't steal. The things that we all basically understand intrinsically, even since we were little children. Use that to be your moral guidance and stop allowing government to have anything that dictates morality. Because as we know, you can't have this authority that pretends to be your moral authority when the very premise how they exist goes against morality to begin with. So to become a government, once again, you have to be a representation that you want to use force or violence as a means to an end. Well, that's not a moral authority. That's just authority. A moral authority leads by example, right? Which is what a law or baseline principles entail. But when you have human beings that pretend that they are your authority and what they say or how they construe what morality or ethics means, well, then once again, it's all subjective. Then you've taken it out of the objective realm in the abstract, and now you've placed it into the subjective minds of fallible human beings. I don't want nothing to do with fallible human beings believing that they're the ultimate arbiter or authority in regards to what it is to be a moral or ethical person. And because I've seen all human beings are fallible, and that power has a corrupting nature, and absolute power, which is what government is, has that absolutely corrupting nature, which is no human being is going to be able to escape it. You can go longer. There are people, like I say, because there are different levels as far as how well a person will hold themselves to a strict adherence to a certain particular parameters or paradigm. Because we are fallible human beings, I don't want to give other human beings this pretense that they have some moral authority. I just want to deal with people in like a matter that the only thing that I think government at this particular time is even deemed worthy of is the fact that there are external states, people with even different states of mind that are even less conducive to freedom than we currently exist. So just like me and my household, right? There might be neighbors that maybe they treat their kids even worse than maybe, let's say, I treat my kids raising. Well, once again, even let's say if I didn't treat my kids properly, well, I still don't want other actors that do things even worse than I to now have the ability to come into my home and dictate how things are done. What I want is, like I say, nobody to have this pretense of authority so that we can at least come together and figure out how can we set up this, whether it's a system or a non-system, so that we can cohabitate, coexist, and deal with each other socially and economically, where we can deal with each other with universal ethics and morality. And like I say, the only time that's ever happened is when you have that reciprocal effect afforded to you. And that's only going to happen when no one has the authority over each other, or we have the ability to, so you either have no guns, which is no government, or everybody has a gun, right? Just like if you said, I used this example in videos back in the past. In a room with 100 people, right? The only time you're going to get people to treat each other properly as far as equality is if either nobody has the metaphorical gun in the room, right? So they have to deal with each other with just their words, right? Now, like I say, I'm taking the physical violence because we're still trying to take it as, like I say, physical or the gun. It's still someone trying to use violence. So if nobody has the ability to do violence, so whether, like I say, no gun or everyone's tied to a chair, right? Whatever. But if everyone has to deal with each other, on voluntary means and measures, or by using our words, to discuss things, then that does actually create genuine equality for everyone. Now, it doesn't mean everybody's going to end up being equal, because everyone might have different levels of competence, but at least nobody has the pretense of authority over them. But the minute you give even just one person in that room of 100 people, the minute you give that one person possession of a gun and the rest of the 99 people don't have possession of that gun, well, that one person, even if they're a real benevolent actor, before they got or took possession of that gun, now they have possession of that gun. How long are they going to hold themselves restricted to the fact that they're still going to treat themselves the same as everyone else, even though they recognize every day that I'm not the same as everyone else? I have this magic power at my disposal, right? I mean, that takes a Herculean task. And to think that every human being or just people that you choose to vote, unless you know like everything about their psychology, to pretend that those people are going to hold themselves to a standard, they're not going to take advantage of being that one person with the power of the gun in the room. Like I say, that's not going to work. Now, the other thing is for me is, okay, well, if because guns do exist, that's the thing. As a libertarian and a pragmatist, I understand guns do exist. There is the means to threaten each other. But the way we're going to prevent anyone having the ability to monopolize that is either nobody in the room has a gun or everybody in the room has the gun, right? And then you still end up with basically the same results, as everyone's going to have to treat each other with some semblance of respect and respect their autonomy, their sovereignty, or that the fact that they're an individual, because everyone has that same ability to threaten each other. That's how we're going to get to a point where we treat each other with respect. And it doesn't mean it's always going to work out perfectly, but that's the best case. That's the best example you could ever think of, is, like I say, either nobody has authority over each other or everybody has authority over each other. And if everybody has authority over each other, then that is a recognition that there is no genuine authority, right? So, and that's what a libertarian, that's what the philosophy of liberty entails is, yeah, just treat each other. Well, the non-aggression principle, self-ownership, I own me. And everything that I produce, whatever I produce, as long as I haven't taken or plundered from someone else, that is mine. Whatever I produce, that's mine. Now, if I choose to voluntarily exchange with people or give or hand out, and be charitable with other people, that's fine. But no one has any authority to take or plunder my economic prosperity or my wealth or anything I produce. Same with property rights. If I have bought property or found a piece of property and I work that property and I build things from that property and no one else has laid claim to that property themselves, that is by natural extension my property. Just like animals in nature, they have, even animals understand property rights. Some might try to counteract that, but in reality, we all understand that when someone some animal tries to dominate and take over other areas that other animals have claimed for their property, we don't accept that that's fine. We would say that, okay, that's in the state of nature because they don't understand the property rights. Now, on the other, or the last portion of that is the non-aggression principle, not to use preemptive force, violence, theft, or coercion towards people. And if we accept that as being, like I say, not just for other people, but for us as well, and lead by example, well, that's the only way that we're going to have a genuinely flourishing society, or a country where we can respect each other enough till at some point in time, maybe in the future, states can cease to exist entirely. But that's not going to happen because people still believe in a state, and because there are competing factions that have their own mentality and their own kind of understanding of what their state should represent. The government of Canada, I don't expect it's going to go away anytime soon. I just want people to get further, at least heading back to the direction and understanding how we should treat each other socially and economically. That eliminates this concept of having an arbitrary authority that gets to control, dictate, and micromanage every area of our social and economic lives. Oh, I see he's gone now. I think Morgan is gone, folks. That's too bad. It was a pretty crappy connection anyways, so it's not the end of the world, to be honest with you. Actually, let me get into the chat. Since I'm on this live stream, let's get in the chat and see what else anyone else, because actually I would prefer actually to get some questions. I like to get some questions. I like to be challenged. That's the thing. I love to be challenged. Okay. Love your rants. Oh, thanks. Thanks, Kim. Appreciate that. Kim Papua or Papook. Kim. Thanks, Kim. Yeah, I do tend to rant from time to time. That's for sure. Some people like it. Some people don't. Okay. Can't understand any of that. Yeah, Shannon. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I read that already. Sorry. Antifa is such a joke. They're more fascist than the Nazis with their hate and violence.
From attaining
because
such
the person responsible.
I hear something.
Okay.
One sec. Are you back, Morgan? All right. Back to the chat. Oh my God. Cut the call. Oh yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah, I probably will. I get it. Yeah, I know I'm too overly patient. I know. And not that you people should have to put up with this. Sorry. I know that's a shame. Hang up and reconnect. Yeah, maybe try that. If he's back on, I'll tell him to just hang up and try connecting. It might work. I'm so sick of listening to Trudeau saying Canadians want. I'm sick of Trudeau. Right. He knows what anyone wants.
Or your own sex.
Hey, Morgan, if do you think you might want to shut down and then just completely reconnect?
I've done that a number of times now. I've lost the signal so often. I'll leave you to the rest of your show, and we'll try and keep touch through text and such, and we can share some ideas. It's been great to run across you on YouTube, and we'll chat in the comments room at the next time I see you out there.
Yeah,
okay?
No problem. Yeah, and thanks for this. Like I say, it's too bad we didn't get to have this in a discussion in a better manner. Because I really thoroughly enjoy having these kinds of discussion with people such as yourself. But yeah, we'll try it again, even at another time, or maybe if the internet gets better for you at any point in time. We might even, if you want, although Skype doesn't even work out to be much better. But yeah, sorry about that, man. But yeah, I won't forget about you. And like I say, maybe we'll try this again at some point in time in the future. No problem. Have a great day.
You too.
If I can make this.
Okay, so I'm just going to get back into the chat here, folks. Maoists lately, but well, like I said, as far as Antifa or any, it's people that, like I say, they're collectivists, right? They want to feel part of a tribe so bad. They're so desperate to feel part of a tribe that they just, what it is they're not happy in their own skin, in their own lives. There's something that's a void in their life, because if you're a happy, well-adjusted human being, as much as like I say, I love my family, right? But I don't feel that I have to become part of a tribe or a collective to give me any meaning in my life. I love having, like, being part of, but once again, that's all voluntary. And it's based on the reason why I love the people that I love is because not just the fact that they have share my same skin color or my genealogy, but what they bring to the table as far as, are they decent people? Are they moral? Are they ethical? Right? That's what once again, why it comes down to treating each other as individuals. I don't know what the hell, how to treat people based on their collective ideology or their skin color. That doesn't tell me enough about a person to know what the hell they're all about. The only way I'm going to know what a person is all about is knowing them as the individual. And collectivism seeks to deny the individual and puts forth and pretends that the collective is a representation of, like I say, if you're part of the state, so you fly the same flag, right? Or vote for a particular party, or you're part of either side of the political spectrum, or whatever religion you go to. Once again, treating people based on collective groupthink or collective identities, it's what is it? It's like I say, it's a destruction of the individual. And the only way we're going to get to the point where we'll treat each other properly is looking at each other and perceiving each other as the individuals and what we are. So I'll treat you, like I said, I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care if you wear a funny hat, right? I don't care if you wear things over your eyes or stuff. If you're reasonable to me, if you, like I say, just meet some very small rules, like don't use preemptive force, violence, theft, or, the minimal things that we need, like I said, to have coexist amongst each other peacefully. As long as that relationship is reciprocal, I don't really care about any other identifiers as far as what group you belong to or what collective you belong to. So once again, it never comes down to the thing with individuals. It's not to deny being part of a collective, but the only way I get to align with any particular group or collective is if it's based on a voluntary exchange and it's done voluntarily. Collectivism, once again, it's forced subjugation. It's forced collectivism that you're talking about when you're talking about government, because it's forcing to try to treat us as a collective, and we're not all a collective, because, like I say, a collective presents or puts forth the notion that you either have to be like the Borgs, where we're all thinking the same thing, right, aligned with the same ideology, have the same concepts of morality or ethics, or even economic astuteness, right? Which that doesn't happen. You're not going to see that is ever going to happen, as far as I can tell. So treating each other as individuals, then you can treat each other like the bad actors, treat them for their evil deeds, and based solely on the deeds that they do, because they might be good at other times, right? Don't punish people when they're being good, punish people when they're doing something wrong. But treat each other as individuals, and not just as the individual they are today, but the individual they'll be next week, next month, next year. Because that bad person might have did something, maybe in their teens, they might be a good person in their 20s or their 30s. So if I say, oh, they were a criminal, well, that term criminal doesn't mean that that's going to carry through and be a representation of who they are as a person for their entire life. Like I say, so individual actions, treating people based on their own individual sovereignty, and respect and acknowledging the fact that that person might even change at some point in time. So, like I say, the only thing you can do is help people as far as understanding morality and ethics and guide them in that manner. And if they don't choose to go that way, well, okay, then you can shun them, you can ignore them. And as long as even if they want to live in their own miserable state and maybe inflict harm upon themselves, as long as they're not harming other people, although the onus would be on you if you're a good, decent, moral person. If I saw someone that's harming themselves, I might even want to say, hey, it's probably not a good idea to harm yourself. I know you're not harming me, but what's your problem? Like, being a decent, moral person means that you might want to reach out to even person that's harming themselves, even though they're not harming you. So, but then again, you might do that not because you're just plain altruistic. You might want to do that just by sheer fact that maybe when you're having hard times psychologically, or having an internal dialogue that's confusing and confound you, well, maybe you want someone else to reach out to you and help you in some way. So that's still reciprocal. It has nothing to do with just, baseless altruism where you just must sacrifice yourself to other people. It's, once again, it has to be based on your own personal choice. And do you deem them worthy? Because some people may be worthy of your respect, your dignity, and your outstretched hand to help them in some way. But other people, maybe not. Maybe there might be the odd person, and there are people like that you stretch your hand out to help them, and they'll cut it off, right? So once again, it's treating each other as individuals. That's the most important thing we can do. And the collective, the group, the tribe, not saying that we should reject being part of any collective group or tribe, but it has to be at the very least, secondary nature as to treating each other as individuals, because we are all individuals. Hope he's gone in October. Yeah, I do too. He better be. If Canadians vote Trudeau in, I don't know if I said this in my past video, but I'll just say it here now. If Trudeau gets voted in again in October, that's going to tell me this country is even worse. And I think it's pretty bad already, folks, but it's going to tell me that it's even worse off. And because there's so many people that rely on government for their income these days, like 4+ million Canadians that work for all areas of government. And I recognize they're not going to do anything to shoot themselves in the foot. But if I recognize that after October that now it's not going to change. Well, me and my wife, we've already discussed it, and I'm probably going to have to try to see, and hopefully it'll work out. I might have to just move to the US. And not saying that they're not going through their own troubles, their own strifes, but as far as what their understanding is, as far as respect in the individual, when collectivism takes hold, if there's one place on this entire globe where I would like to be, is the place that has a full grasp of freedom of speech, the First Amendment, and the acknowledgement that you need the Second Amendment to protect yourself when things do get bad, right? When violent revolutions may come to exist, trust me, you want to live in a country where you have the ability to possess not just firearms, but to protect yourself from domestic or foreign threats. And the US is the only place on this whole planet that at least has that kind of intrinsic understanding of what it is to be a free human being and how you can use your personal autonomy and your individuality to stand against oppressors. Yeah, think about the 3%ers back in the day. The Americans have that psychology down pat, or at least a substantial portion of them, and their legal and judicial system still kind of respects that to a degree. I see it as being upended at this point in time. But like, yeah, if I was a gambling man and the world goes through a protracted period where collectivism takes a foothold, like I say, US is where I want to be. Or in the middle of sticks here in Canada. Well, once again, but then you're not even participating in much. You're just kind of seeking to escape reality, right? I don't say it can work out for either or, but unfortunately in Canada, because our history is this constant believing in some authority, whether it's the Queen or the Prime Minister, like too many Canadians are indoctrinated. And because, like I say, we've been born, bred, and raised to believe that somebody is our authority, right? Whether it's the Queen or you know, the politicians, like, you know, whether it's Trudeau or Scheer, like I say, this history and the culture of the Americans, at least a large substantial portion of them don't believe in people having this arbitrary authority, which is why, you know, the separation of powers was so predominant. And like I say, yeah, I don't even want to get into the history lesson of how the American system or the Constitution was written up and drafted, but yeah, they understood intrinsically that, yeah, you don't want to give any central planner or central authority this much power to dictate and control every aspect of your social and economic life. Because once that happens and once it becomes entrenched democratically, because like I say, that now you have an area where it's not just, you don't have to worry about Trudeau per se. He's not going to do nothing to you. Like I say, it's his mindless enforcers and those that will align with him because they need their paycheck, right? The status. And in Canada, we got a lot of status. Actually, the overwhelming majority of Canadians in this country, I firmly believe, just by talking to them, are status in nature. At least in the US, there's still a substantial portion of that population that's not status. All the philosophy that you hear that as it pertains, right? A lot of the literature that you learn in regards to individualism is grounded on, well, the American Revolution and a lot of the great leaders and people that were post or part of the Enlightenment era that set up the U.S. Constitution, right? People that understood this stuff intrinsically. And like I say, that's to me, that's what matters most, is surround yourself with people that at least understand what it's like to be free. Because if you surround yourself with people that are very much indoctrinated in the religion of the state, they're hard. They're hard people to break free from that paradigm. You can try, like, shake them. It's like, yeah, come on. But in Canada, like, very, very ideologically driven in this country. Unfortunately, it's an unfortunate thing, but it's a reality that I've noticed and I've known my whole life. I wish it wasn't the case, which is why I do what I do, is try to break Canadians free from that paradigm. And I'm trying my best, and I do recognize that there are Canadians that are moving further and further away from them. And the only way that's going to happen is give them some blunt, harsh truths, like what I do. And I think some people, they get all mad at me because I say that, you know, there's no such thing as legitimate government stuff. I get it. You think it sounds outrageous, and I'm sure it really does. Just like if you walk up to, like, I use this example all the time, my grandmother, and tell her that the earth is 6,000 years old, she gets really, really upset when you say that. It's the truth, right? But hey, if the truth bothers you, Okay, whatever. And it might in the here and now, but it also has the power to set you free. It was the Orthodox Jews people had them put to death by the Romans. Oh, come on. Can we not? Yeah. Yeah. Well, no, some of them sold them out and stuff for sure, but you can't, but that's the thing. It wasn't everybody, right? There were some that were Jewish and some that weren't. That's why, like, this is the importance of talking in reference and ideals or ideas and individuals rather than just using group or group identity, right? So yes, Jesus Christ, was forsaken and some Jewish people at the time, sold him up the river and allowed but once again, they were individuals, not every Jewish person alive at that time, right? So this is the problem. Once again, this is the problem with collectivism. Once you've denied the individual, then you've denied personal responsibility. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day, is you're denying people's personal responsibility and accountability and trying to create a collective narrative where we can just go towards and target entire groups. Bullshit, bull fucking shit, bullshit. I reject that entirely. Like I say, I like to treat people based on who they are as an individual, not their characteristics, not their traits, not their history, not even their religion, not even their ideology. Like I say, I'll treat them based on what they do and what they, as a direct consequence, and how it's going to harm me. Even if someone wants to, like say, even if someone that's hates on Jesus Christ or doesn't, you could have someone sit there all day, every day and say, Jesus Christ is bullshit. It's fake. He never existed. That's no harm to anybody. That's just a person trying to work something in their mind. And as long as he's not harming anyone, think whatever you want to think, right? The problem is, though, as it pertains to when you get into the habit of thinking in things in group think or in collective manners, then you can cause a lot of harm and hardships towards a lot of people that haven't done anything wrong themselves. The founding fathers were a collective, just saying. Oh, really, though? What do you got to offer, Mike? Oh, really, though? I mean, that's the thing with people. This is what kills me. Like, anyone can sit there and fucking come up with, like, I mean, I could do that too. If I just sat around every day, all day. Oh, look, they said something wrong at one point in time. Watch, look, I got them. Look, see? What the fuck does that mean? What are you contributing to the conversation, to the dialogue, by saying that what? The founding fathers, well, compared to who, Mike? I'm just going to sit right here. Actually, I'm going to wait till Mike answers, and you tell me who did a better job as far as bringing about even some semblance of intellectual knowledge to the Western world as far as individual rights and freedoms. Huh? Well, I know it wasn't any of the Canadian founding fathers. I know it wasn't any of the fucking, well, you got to go a long way back to Britain, right? So he definitely wasn't anywhere in mainland Europe. Mexico, anywhere in South America, Africa, where? Please, just give me some answer, please. Like I say, and I'll admit that the founding fathers weren't perfect, but hey, we're a couple 100+ years past that. I'm not saying to go back to the fucking founding fathers only. I'm saying I'm building and expanding upon the knowledge that they had, and I'm saying I'm going even further than that. But you want to talk about, well, the founding fathers weren't perfect. Nope, they weren't. Who fucking said they were? Let's get up to speed and talk about today. Like I say, the founding fathers are ideas that we should build upon, expand upon their knowledge or their concepts of individual rights and freedoms and liberties. But to point out what? They're bad? They were a collective? My family, I mean, if you want to just use collective, because once again, you didn't use the term collectivist, because that's the thing, Mike. There's a difference between a collective and a collectivist. You add that ist on it, that's when you get into the ideological world around. If you don't realize that, if you don't grasp that, maybe, learn before you start saying stuff that, like I said, then you need me to correct you. Wouldn't you rather at least learn these things probably rather than embarrassing yourself on a continuing ongoing basis? Like I say, listen up. Maybe, because hopefully next time you won't be foolish enough to put forth stuff like this. Because this is what I try to do. I've done it for myself and I've done it for a lot of other people. I'm trying to help educate and inform you. But if every time I try to, it's like if I can imagine if I was a teacher in a classroom and every time I was trying to educate and inform people and they just, oh yeah, but right. Oh yeah, but Matter of fact, at this point in time, if all they did was just constantly fucking use just bullshit or throw paper airplanes around or just anything to distract from what I'm trying to say, it's like, okay, learn amongst yourself there, kiddies. I'm fucking exiting stage left and I'll go teach people that want to learn something. Right? I'm not going to sit there and waste my fucking time trying to explain things to people that's every second word I say, or they find, oh, look, I can find something that might be. Come on. Enough with the trying to play the gotcha moment. If you're intellectually or superior in any way, fucking step out of the shadows and let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this in real time so you can show me how superior you are, and then I'll just sit back and I'll let you take over. Matter of fact, I'm more than happy. I've done lots enough videos today. It's like I'm waiting for somebody to come up and step up the plate, do what I do freely with no fucking compensation whatsoever, and then I'll just sit on the back burner and enjoy the benefits and the proceeds of other people being properly educated and informed through philosophical terms or understand what it is to be a human being, and then I don't have to put in as much hard work and effort as what I do every fucking day. Yeah, I'm sorry, folks, but stuff like that just bothers me, man. It really does, because, like I say, it's just people that just want to people that just want to tear other people down or pretend that, oh, look, I've got a point that's something that, look, I'm one-upping you. Like, well, at least if you're going to do it, like, I'll accept it if you actually show something where you've done something. But all you really did today is cause me to spend about 5 or 10 minutes responding to absolute bullshit. Maybe I should have just ignored it in the first place. Collective. Chain. Claire Boofman hired Canadian security firm to spy on judges and politics. Yeah, once again, I don't get into those that I've heard of that Boffman thing. Individual little stories that reference a particular individual, I get it, but what does that have? But yeah, no doubt, spy on judges, lots of bad stuff today. I don't know. Like I say, I don't know what I gotta put. Libertarian, I thought was supposed to understand. I thought people, when they read Libertarian, means it's about ideas and philosophy. I'm not a gossiper. I really don't care much for that stuff. I really, really don't. A great history on Antifa is done by Dr. Robert. God forbid. History. Excellent breakdown, historical account. Well, listen, that's great and all, but you could also ask me about Antifa. Is there anything that I'll miss out there? Because I'm pretty sure, yeah, Antifa, they're collectivist groups. They all have that group thing. It's all about identity. I mean, what? I don't know. Yes, read history books for sure. Definitely read history books. That's important, I guess. And it is. I'm not saying it's not. It's just that for the sake of this conversation, what am I not doing a good enough job or what? Anyways. Do the Brofmans control the, oh my God, Liberal Party is just involved. Okay, like I say, I don't care about that stuff. Loblaws was just outed for fixing bread prices. Yeah, we know that. Getting kickbacks from Trudy and blah, blah. We were ruled by oligarchs. Yeah. Well, it's government. Once again, Loblaws didn't get to do fucking anything without government allow them to do it. No. Once again, like this is the problem with this goddamn kind of shotgun approach as far as people that are trying to learn about things is in regards to individual rights. Like, I mean, I guess if you just want to spray everywhere, but like, shouldn't you focus on like to me, it's so inefficient to constantly be going after like laws or this corporation or this business did this or this person did that, or there's one overarching thing that causes all the things that you're referencing to happen and to have some semblance of legitimacy. And that's that one thing called government. So at the very least, and I get it, most Canadians aren't going to stop believing in government. Most Canadians are still very much indoctrinated in this being a good little status. But I'm trying to say, okay, I get it. I get that you're indoctrinated in this faith, right? This religion. But I'm saying, keep your faith if you want, but shouldn't we start to unwind the things that the state has power or authority over, right? If you care about all these things like, oh, bread, like price fixing, okay, well, hey, that's an economic thing, right? And that's the government that's given this company, this corporation, the ability to monopolize an industry. How about you allow for some free market competition? Loblaws, as soon as they realize, oh shit, I can't do what I'm doing anymore because the minute I try to price fix, or me and other companies or corporations try to price fix, someone else will step up the plate and offer a better business model that will take away my market share. Well, like I say, that's a real corrective mechanism right there. No government involved, just freedom. Freedom will affect Loblaws way more than what? What are you going to ask the government? Hey, we need you to write some more rules there to regulate Loblaws. Meanwhile, Loblaws got way more power and influence to you, and they'll be lobbying those same government officials to change those laws and those rules to benefit them once again. But you're still using that same authority once again. So what you're saying is, I want to wrestle that gun from Loblaws, and Loblaws saying, "Oh, I want that gun back." They're going to wrestle away from you. I'm saying, how about you make that gun, or at least turn into a squirt gun that can't harm any of us, right? Or has no power. Like if Loblaws couldn't lobby government to do what they do and get away with their bullshit, well, they wouldn't be doing it, right? Because they'd be like, oh, fuck, I got nowhere to turn to create some monopoly or where I can get out from underneath being held accountable for my business. Or the CEO, for example. If the CEO of Loblaws didn't have limited liability as a corporate leader or a CEO, and his house, his car, his pension fund was plundered if he did something wrong, well, watch how quick that corrective measure would take place. All of a sudden, that Loblaws CEO, all of a sudden, he'd be much more moral and ethical as far as how he runs his business. Once again, not because government told him to do it, but because he relies on people to pay for his products that he provides, right? Or his service that he provides. And if people have somewhere else to go when they realize that this person is trying to screw you over or trying to price fix or monopolize the industry, well, they'll just go elsewhere. Once again, and it creates proper incentives, which means the good person, the person that's trying to do things better, more ethical, they will be rewarded such. And Loblaws, well, once again, they'll turn into a Sears or a Target in Canada, right? It's not government that's going to correct these corporate hacks or these evil people that are in the corporate world. What's going to correct them is, like I say, freedom, the free market. Sorry, I know I get frustrated because, well, what it is because I've been trying to say this for so long. It's like, how many times do I got to say it before people realize? Like, to me, it's like, I don't know. Just try to learn. Just try to work through it. And if you don't have that capacity, okay, I'm not going to say that everyone has to have that capacity then, but I mean, just stop making other people confused. Man, confusion, like I say, confusion is one of the biggest problems I see out there today. Is nobody knows how to think because everyone's got their opinion and everyone thinks they're right. Not everyone's right. And until people get to realize that there is actually a hierarchy as far as authority when you're talking as far as intelligence and understanding and grasping concepts, like I say, not a forced authority, but a genuine acknowledged authority just by their competence. But that's the thing. This is the problem in this world today. Everyone actually truly believes in their mind that everyone has, and I guess that's that postmodernism, right? Or determinism. Like people think that everybody is just, everything is subjective, open to interpretation. Nobody is actually right about anything. It's just, it's all a constant negotiation. Now, some things are for sure. There's lots of things that are still a continuing ongoing conversation for sure and dialogue. But there are some things, like I say, theft is wrong, right? To me, taken from someone against their will, against their edict, or against their will or against their choice, that's something that should be so universalized. And once you've understood that theft is universalized to be immoral, illegitimate, or illegal, then all you have to do is work out and expand that. And government, then the very premise of government today is like, well, the very system of governments that we function under is based and trenched on forced wealth and income redistribution, which is theft, right? Or extortion, as some people like to call it or coin it. But either way, then you should at least acknowledge that these people don't have any genuine moral authority. So if you're, like I say, at least if people were honest, is like they just want team A to win over team B, at least if you're coming at it from that honest standpoint, at least I know where you're coming from. But Loblaws or any of these companies, they don't have any authority over you. Right? You walk into Loblaws, they can't, or if Loblaws can't come up to your house or your apartment or your condo and say, yeah, you got to shop here. You better, and you'll pay what I damn well say. No, they don't have any of that authority. Everything that they get as far as authority and ability to micromanage anything in the economy is done through government legislation or regulations. Economics. I watched the Zizek and Jordan Peterson one. Actually, it was a great debate, although it was weird because Zizek didn't even, I didn't sound like he was defending Marxism at all in reality. And actually, as far as the capitalist end of it, Jordan Peterson has shown me once again. I mean, he's decent. He read the Communist Manifesto, but that's not enough. And you have to understand macro and microeconomics, finances, and all that stuff. But macroeconomics is so important, and that's one thing I understand with people. A lot of people that I have disagreements with is they understand some of the things in regard to social freedoms, right? But they just, I do understand that a lot of Canadians, and what was it? Stats Canada came out with a report a few years ago. What was it? 18% of women and 22% of men that are economically or financially literate. So that means 82% or 78% of men or women that are illiterate when you're talking about economics or finances, which actually does correlate and make sense, because most people I talk to, that's the area in their mind that they fail and they falter. It's not they're usually their social morality. Most people that understand social morality, at least somewhat to a certain degree. It's that once you bring economics, like the value of our intellect, of our labor and business transactions and all that stuff and trade, that's the area where I see, oh, there's where people are messed up. And, that's the consequences of that is because what you've been taught in school, they didn't want to teach you this stuff. They wanted to teach you basic arithmetic so you can count as you're standing on that production line or whatever. But they didn't want to give you the proper macroeconomic fundamentals so you understand things intrinsically, to understand that proper economics, free market economics, is based on observing humanity, not based on a utopian concept, but how humans actually function and how incentives work to change and affect people's habits or behaviors. Really, free market economists, if you take the Austrians, the classical economists, or even the monetarists such as Milton Friedman, really what you're talking about is it's people that understand humans from the psychological realm. You understand human psychology. Just the number crunching side of it, like 2 + 2 is 4, that will never teach you anything. You have to understand economics in terms of human value, human labor, and how that all unfolds in the real world. If you have a good grasp of that kind of understanding as far as macroeconomics, then you have that ability to put those pieces of the puzzle together much more seamlessly. So work on understanding and having a better grasp on economics, and that will help you tremendously in regards to, especially when you're talking about corporations or government or rules and regulations in regards to economic transactions or exchanges. That, like I said, help yourself out. If you want to help yourself out and a whole lot of other people, learn much more about economics. If you can do that, like I said, that will put you in a state of mind that will place you far superior to most. But you're still, even when you get to that point, you're still going to have a lot of people that are going to offer up a lot of ridiculous arguments. But listen, it's only ridiculous because that's what they've been told. So don't hate on the people that are misinformed or ignorant to particular facts. Now help educate and inform them. So I'm sorry I'll saving right now. Sorry for getting frustrated, but what it is I just do it so much. And I do sometimes even get tired of hearing myself repeat these things, right? Because I don't want people to get sick of me, but at the same time, it's very important to point these things out when I deem it necessary. So anyway, sorry, that's my little rant. That's my little ramble as far as that. Weston family. Okay, right there. Rotten paid for. Trudeau's connection to the prof. Oh my God. That's all you guys like to do is talk about people. People. I like ideas. I didn't make it to the list again this year. Damn. Make it on that list. Not sure what the list is, Ian. Me either. Okay, is there a Laurentian group of oligarchs controlled media in the government? Holy Jesus. Trudeau met Kerry with the Aga Khan. Next year. Can't. I'll hope for you, Ian. Okay, wait. Okay, probably going to have to close this one down because I'm not seeing any questions pertaining to things that I like to talk about. Lots of exchanges back and forth as far as dealing with particular stories that's happening in the news, which obviously, these are important. And like I do cover them, if not, but when I cover them, it's to talk about things like my response and my reaction is usually to talk about things, like I say, from the philosophical or the moral or ethical stance, or even the economic stance, but not to talk about the people as the people. Like when I talk about Trudeau, I don't really give a fuck about Trudeau himself. I care about what the kind of shit he's putting forth and presenting and how he's trying to indoctrinate the people into believing some really stupid shit. I don't really care about Trudeau himself. He's just a person. Like he could be replaced by another idiot, you know, with maybe less shinier hair or less obsession with his fucking socks. But to me, I care about ideas. I care about ideas. I don't really care much about talking about people per se. I care about the ideas and the stuff that roams around their head and how they put forth and present how we should cohabitate, coexist, and deal with each other socially or economically. Anyways, thanks to everyone for watching this video. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to tie it up now. I got another one coming up in 2 weeks, May 5th. Is it a Sunday? Yeah, I believe it's a Sunday. And what was it? He goes by the name PX Remedios. And that's going to be a quite in-depth conversation in regards to, let me just read here because I had it written. Taxation, government, civil liberties, immigration, corporate welfare, cronyism, climate change. So lots of things that we'll be covering in that particular conversation. Like I said, that's coming up on the 5th. And I'm trying to get back to doing my Liberty Hunters podcast. That's another thing too. I got to get back into doing that now that I have now that I have live stream working again. Boy, I was getting a little worried there for a while. Was it 2 or 3 weeks went by? I couldn't get the live stream working. Damn, what's going on? But it's back up and running. Well, that was the other thing I noticed. YouTube did a lot of changes behind the scenes. Actually, even my channel, they must have cleared out some bot accounts and stuff because I went down by, I don't know, like 150 or so subscribers. But I do see that the last couple of days it's finally grown. So I guess they figured out, got the algorithms all back working, I guess, again. And hopefully they'll leave it alone for a little while so my page isn't affected negatively, at least for the next little while. But anyways, thanks to everyone who did join me today. And hey, by the way, have a great and an excellent happy Easter. Not just a happy Easter, but a meaningful Easter. And enjoy this time with your friends and family or coworkers or anyone else out there that respects you for you, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. Not forced collectivism, but joining and associating with people that respect you for the individual what you are. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.